but nobody else did. So we're going to rewind. Again, this is Ask Temi Live, where we discuss the best ways to establish your business, protect your name, and keep your profits. What we're talking about today is navigating as leaders through this coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. And we're specifically talking about being people of influence. We're going to be unpacking the stimulus program that has been passed through legislation and that the president signed into law. So we're going to be talking about the different opportunities that are available there, some retirement things, unemployment things. If you are someone who owns a business and you have employees, things and tools that you have that you can use to kind of navigate that. So please feel free to be leaving me messages, comments, things like that. We're also on YouTube. We're also on Instagram. So these are all ways that you can kind of let me know if you hear me or not. All right. So I'm going to just kind of go through what I covered before because I don't think y'all heard me. Essentially, I said the first thing we need to do is we want to make sure that we're pausing and that we're kind of taking this as an opportunity to reflect. The second thing you want to do is you want to prioritize. You want to remember that even though we're about to talk about finances and we're about to talk about businesses, the most important thing is to make sure you're keeping yourself and your family safe. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing safety, we're practicing social distancing, we're practicing health and wellness, that we're taking care of our minds, our bodies, our souls, our spirits, right? So these are priorities. And then as we take care of those things, we can also go forward and decide how can we take care of our communities? How can we take care of our businesses? How can we take care of our finances? But we have to make sure that we pause and that we prioritize before we get to the planning aspect. And so I'm going to just jump right into that planning. And what I'm going to do is I want to kind of share something with you all that I think will help. So bear with me. I'm trying to do some things to kind of help. Let's not show that. Let's show this. All right. And so this is just to kind of guide us as we go through some of these really important topics that are kind of broken down into the laws that have been passed down. Now, this is really important. I want as many people, and sorry, if you're on Instagram, you're not going to be able to see this. So make sure you go back and you find this on YouTube. It will be there. It'll also be on my Facebook page and things like that. But I'll be talking about it, so you'll be able to at least hear. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the stimulus check. Everybody has been discussing, when am I going to get my check? So I just wanted to give you some quick facts and figures about that, some important information that you can use. The stimulus check that's supposed to go out is for $1,200 for individuals. If you're married, it's $2,400. If you have kids who are dependents, it's $500. And this is a check that's supposed to go directly into your account. It's supposed to be automatically deposited or sent to you. The way that they're basing how they're going to send this money, whether you're going to get an individual check for $1,200 or going to get a joint check for $2,400, is how you filed your last taxes. So one of the things that they're encouraging people to do is make sure your 2018 and 2019 taxes are filed, especially your 2018. Obviously, with everything that's been going on right now, 2019 might be a little bit hard to kind of file at this time, but you want to make sure that you're filing these taxes because this is how you're going to get your stimulus check. Again, $1,200 for adults, $500 for kids. File your taxes sooner rather than later in order to make sure that you're not overlooked. The next thing I want to talk about was required paid sick leave. And so there's a new law that was established even before the $2 trillion stimulus package that was called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Now, this is for my people who are not able to work because of a shutdown. Maybe your job has been shut down. Maybe your kid's school has been locked, which is most people in the country right now. Schools have been closed. And so maybe you're no longer able to work because you have to stay at home with your kids. Well, there was a law that was passed that says that you can earn some form of unemployment. You get 10 days, I believe, up front where it's unpaid sick leave. But after that, you're eligible to get up to $12,000 over 12 weeks in unemployment. Not unemployment, in a required paid sick leave. So these are rules that are established by the federal government. As employers, if you're a business owner, you should know this because you're going to be held accountable for this. You actually should have this notice posted somewhere. It's actually required that you post it somewhere or that you share it on your website or whatever platform that your employees use to communicate, especially if you're doing things virtually right now. Maybe you use something like Slack or you have an email group that you send information out through. You should be sending out this information, allowing your employees to know what benefits they have available to them. Okay, so that's the required paid sick leave. And again, required notice. And we'll talk a little bit more. I'll give you some more information about how to make sure you get that notice out. The next thing I really want to touch on were grants. Grants essentially are free money, right? And if you have the opportunity to get free money from the government, I think that you need to go ahead and take advantage of it. And so how can we access these grants? Well, the SBA has been given an expansion of something that was already in place, this economic injury disaster loan, right? So that's already been in place. But now one of the things that they've added is an advance. And so right now, if you go to the SBA website, you can apply for an advance on a loan that does not have to be repaid. So even though they're calling it a loan, you don't have to repay it. And you can get up to $10,000. Now, one of the things that they've said is that this is supposed to be distributed to you within 3 days of your application. But in practicalities, what's been happening as people are applying is that it's been taking longer because, hey, everybody is trying to take advantage of this opportunity. And again, now this is a free loan. So you're going to have to submit an application, but you're not required to repay this. This loan advance is not something that you're going to have to repay. Free money, okay, up to $10,000. So you might as well try. And this is for people who own businesses. This is not just for anybody, okay? So when we talked about the required paid sick leave, that's for people who are employees and who are unable to work due to either being sick, taking care of someone who's sick, or taking care of children who are not able to go to school, right? So that's what that's for. The grants are specifically for business owners who are trying to continue to operate their businesses and need money. Free, who's eligible, have to have employees. That is one of the major things that they're trying to ensure is that you have people. So you have to have a company of 500 people or less. But I believe one of the things that they've done that's really cool with a lot of these laws is that they've expanded who qualifies. So before, you would need to be somebody who's a corporation or an LLC. But in many of these instances, you can be a sole proprietor. You can be someone who hasn't formally gone through the process of registering or forming a business, and you're still able to apply for some of these loans. So keep that in mind. So again, it's free money. It's on the SBA website, and I'll give you access to all of that. I'll share some more resources, but up to $10,000 provided as a grant. And again, please make sure, if you have any questions or anything, send them through. I'm able to see some of the questions coming through on Instagram. So if you have any questions on Facebook, let me know. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was our loans. All right. So these loans are different. Loans you have to pay back, obviously, but they're trying to basically throw cash into the economy so that things can keep going. And so they're having low interest loans that are available. This one specifically that I'm going to talk about is under something called the Payment Protection Program. And so you're supposed to apply for this through a lending institution or a bank. But basically, these loans might be forgivable. And again, it's for small business owners. That means you have a business that has less than 500 employees. The majority of the people that follow me, that I talk to, that I work with, most of you fall under that category. So you can apply for these loans. You'll have, I believe, I'm trying to remember if it's 2 or 10 years. I think it's up to 10 years to repay this. And there's 6 months of a deferment. What they're looking at is they want to provide money that helps you keep people on payroll. So they want to make sure that you're using this to pay people, pay people's wages, even if they're unable to come to work, right? And so tied into this are some other things that I'll talk about or address a little bit later, some benefits if you are an employer who provides this. But basically, the government will give you a loan, right? And I think this one I saw is up to $10 million, right? But it's based off of, clarify between this loan and the other one. Okay, I will definitely do that. But essentially, this one is a loan. And the first thing that I spoke about was a grant. The only thing is that they're couching this grant language in something called a loan advance. So you go onto the website, you see the opportunity to apply for the loan advancement and also the loan. Even if you don't qualify for a loan under this economic injury disaster loan, you still might be able to get this advance, which is up to $10,000 that you do not have to pay back. Now, the loans that we're talking about, the ones that I'm specifically addressing are the ones under the Payment Protection Program. But there's also one under an economic injury disaster loan, but you don't need to worry. Well, I wouldn't say you don't need to worry about it. It might be something that you need to evaluate on a one-off basis or one-on-one basis. But the Payment Protection Program has better benefits than any of the other loans that I've than any other loan, which is different from what I said, the grant before, okay? So the payment protection program is essentially to help you continue to pay for people who you have on payroll. If you have employees, this is to incentivize you to continue to pay them. So you can apply for this loan. It's based off of how much your payroll usually costs. So you're going to have to basically give an estimate for how much you've spent in the past on payroll. And then again, the amount for this is up to $10 million. And the reason why they're doing this is, let's say you have a high value employee, so an attorney or something, or an accountant, and you're paying them, $70, $80, $90,000 a year. This is what you're using to kind of calculate this. And they're trying to ascertain or try to figure out how much do you need to get in order to help these people kind of make it through the next 2, 3, 4 months, so that you don't end up losing people and you don't end up letting people go. So we have fewer people on unemployment. And so I'm going to switch and talk about unemployment. I know I've been talking for a while and it's a lot of content, but I just really want you to know about all the information that's available. And so the next thing is unemployment. One of the cool things that they've done in the law with regards to unemployment is that if you're a gig employee, that means if you're somebody who works for Uber or you work for, oh, hello, I see somebody else join. If you work for Uber or you work for another one of these organizations where you're considered an independent contractor, you can still now apply for unemployment. That was not something that was available to you before. You needed to have an actual employer. You could not be someone who was solo. So essentially what they've decided to do is expand who's allowed to qualify for this program. And so one of the other things that they've had done from a federal perspective is that you can actually get $600 more per week than you could through just your state program. Because unemployment is typically just a state-based program, and it still is. You're going to have to apply through your state, but the federal government is supplying an additional $600 per month on top of whatever your state is providing. All right, and they've also expanded how long you can be on unemployment. So there are instances where you can be on unemployment for up to 39 weeks. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you are eligible, that you're applying for this to kind of help you get through. And even if you're just severely reduced in terms of how much work you're able to do, you can still apply for this unemployment. Okay, so gig workers, people who are considered independent contractors, solopreneurs. So if you have run your business by yourself, great. I see someone said they're adding business owners that they know. Please do. If you run your own business, you've never formed your LLC, which you should do. We're going to talk about that another day. But if you've not done that, you can still benefit from this. You can go get unemployment. You can apply for these grants. You can apply for these loans. All right. And the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of the planning is the tax extension and credits. So from a federal perspective, our taxes are not going to be due on April 15th anymore. They're due July 15th. And it's an automatic extension for your federal taxes. This is not for your state taxes. If you're in a different state, you need to go ahead and look and see what your state has decided to do. So for example, Texas has not expanded or Texas has not yet given any type of extension for your state taxes. This has only occurred on a federal level. So you want to make sure that you're keeping this in mind. Now, the tax credits portion that I wanted to talk about refers back to our required paid sick leave, right? We were talking about that, and the loans. So those two things that I touched on earlier. Your required paid sick leave and yes, your loans under the payment protection program. If you as an employee or an employer decide to take steps to keep your employees on payroll, you will be given the opportunity to get a tax credit when it comes time to pay your taxes. Now, it depends on which program you decide to do or how you decide to do this. But if you are spending money to help people make it through this time period, the government is going to reward you by allowing you to apply that money that you spent up to 50% in some instances, and I think up to 100% in others. I'm not quite sure. But you're able to apply that as a tax credit, which means you know how we're taxed based off of how much we make? You're able to decrease the overall amount of how much you're reporting to the government based off of how much you pay in either paid sick leave or in terms of how much you pay in payroll under the payment protection program. And so there are opportunities for you to reduce your overall tax burden. There are also a couple of other things that are available, but There's just a lot of opportunity is the summary. This is something that I do not want people to pass up, because things are probably going to get a little difficult. And whatever help we can get right now, I think we should take advantage of. And so, again, we talked about the stimulus check, that you should be expecting it, but when, we don't know. We talked about the Required Paid Sick Leave Act. We talked about grants, loans, unemployment, tax credits, tax extensions. We talked about a lot, and we just covered the surface. There's so much more to cover, but it's really something that you want to make sure that you're doing on a one-on-one basis. And so I know I see some people who have been commenting, asking questions on Instagram, asking questions on Facebook. The final thing that I wanted to cover, if you have, and again, if you have questions, go ahead and send them in. But the final thing that I want to let you know is I've made a lot of references to a lot of resources that are available, but I want you to know where you can kind of go to access them. And so what I've decided to do is put them all together on my website. If you go to, actually, before we go back there, if you go to my website, www.toslegal.com/COVID-19. If you go there, you're going to be able to access, and you sign up for my email list. It's part of it. Once you sign up for the email list, you're going to be able to access a list of all these different resources that we spoke about. And so I'm going to show that to you right now really quickly. Give me 1 second. All right, so let's see what we have going on here. All right, so this is the site that you're going to go to, okay? And once you go in here, you click that button, Access Resources, you're going to be able to access this page right here. On this page, I'll have the replay for this posted for anybody who wants to watch it. So if you're on Instagram and you wanted to see some of the things I was making reference to, you can go to www.toslegal.com/COVID-19. No dashes or anything in between. You can access the replay from today's program. Additionally, I have links to the things that I've discussed. So if you want to find out more information about the loan and the advance or the grants that I've talked about, they are here. You can apply. The actual link to the application for the payment protection program is also here. Guidance for employers in Texas, things that you want to know. It's available on this site. And then more information about that Required Paid Sick Leave Act is also there. Again, and there's more resources. The other thing that I wanted to show you is that if you're an employer, I kind of made reference to this before, this handout was produced by the Department of Labor. It's something that you are required to post. You are required to share. It is federal law. It's something that this is a required notice, okay? And so you have to make sure that you share this with your employees, not necessarily people you're about to hire or people that you fired. This is for people who are your employees right now. And it goes over that expanded medical leave that I was talking about for people who have been impacted by COVID-19. So again, whether you're sick, someone you're taking care of is sick, or whether your kids are stuck home with you because of all the lockdowns, you could qualify for this. And as an employer, you need to let people know about all of these things. And so you can access this specific document as well as a couple of other things on my site. This is something that the one in the middle, the Coronavirus Emergency Loans Guide and Checklist, that was produced by the Department of Commerce. Information for you there. The last thing is a paper edition of the Payment Protection Plan application. You can access that. I have some things for lawyers as well, if you're a lawyer following along. But whew, that was a mouthful. So essentially, what I want us to keep in mind, all right, is that as terrible as things might be, and as stressful as things might be, there might be opportunities. And again, if we pause, if we prioritize, if we plan, I think we can continue to pursue and persist. I think that we can decide that, hey, we're not going to let ourselves be overwhelmed or overcome by all the craziness that has occurred with this COVID-19 situation and pandemic. And we can rise up and lead. And so I know I've been talking for a while. If there are any questions, it looks like we have some new comments. Oh, I see someone said, so the economic injury considered a grant or a loan? Can a person apply for multiple resources? That's a great question. And I'll just share that here. So this is one of the questions that we received. Yes, and if you need to send me a DM after, if you need to talk to me after, feel free. But here's one of the questions that we just got. So the economic injury disaster loan, is it a grant or a loan? There are two. It's two parts. There is a loan and there's a portion that is a grant, but they're not calling it a grant. The portion that I'm calling a grant, because you don't have to repay it, is a loan advance. Okay? So because it's a loan advance, right? You apply for it and they can give you up to $10,000. From the people who I've heard who have applied for it, it's taken them about 30 minutes to finish the application online. And so if you are granted this, and I don't know all the specific details of how many people they're granting this to or how much money. I just know that in the stimulus package, they've put billions of dollars specifically towards businesses, and it's going to be first come, first serve. But the grant aspect is something you do not have to pay back. There is also a loan, and I don't remember how much this loan is. And this is something that has always been in existence, right? This is something that has been around for a while. But the reason why most of the time we're looking at the payment protection loan rather than this economic injury disaster loan is that this economic injury disaster loan is probably not forgivable, whereas the payment protection one is, if you spend most of that money on maintaining your payroll. And so you could get this loan and then have it forgiven if they see that 75% of that money was spent towards, health benefits for employees or giving people paychecks on a weekly basis or anything else pertaining to maintaining your payroll. So it's a little bit, I know it's kind of confusing, but that is the EIDL one, okay? The economic injury disaster loan. There are two parts. So that's one thing, right? It has a loan and there's a loan advance that you do not have to pay back. And even, let's say you apply for the loan portion and they deny you the loan, you still might be able to get the advance, which you don't have to pay back. All right? So really great question. I'm glad that you sent that in. Let me see. I'm trying to see if there are any other questions on Instagram. I'm going to check YouTube real quickly. Let's see if we had anybody send anything in here. And if not, we're going to log off. Okay, I'm not able to see or pick up on anything on my YouTube, but listen, if you go to my YouTube page and you leave me some questions, I'll figure out a way to get them answered. I'll post more resources on the website. So as more information becomes available, let me know. Oh, and the final thing, this is really important that I want to make sure everybody knows. One of the things that's going to happen as you start applying for these things, right, is that you do run the risk of being audited. Okay, let's put it out there because the government's going to want to know how you're spending the money that they're giving you. So it is critical. It is super important. I'm almost begging you to make sure that you keep your books in order. You want to make sure that you are keeping your accounts in order. You want to make sure that you're documenting decisions that you make. So if you're an LLC, if you're a corporation, those annual meetings that you're supposed to have them, make sure you're keeping track of all this information. Okay, because that's going to come up. They're going to go back and check. So it's super important. And if you're somebody who we're trying to look at how we survive this, but we're also looking long term. You need to get your stuff in order. Again, we have some resources available for that as well on the site. If you want to reach out to me and you're going to need some of my services, there's some savings that are available if you log onto the site that I've made available for people if you need to meet with me, because I know things are tight. We're sensitive to that situation. We all have bills to pay, but let's see what we can all do to kind of help each other. I see another question. How does it work with contract workers? Let's say you 1099 them. All right. So this is one of the things that they haven't provided exact clarification about. But one of the things that might come into one of the ways people have been thinking about this, right, is that if your 1099 independent contractor is someone who is kind of on their own, in a lot of instances, people are factoring that in as part of their payroll expense. Because the government, again, has kind of broadened the way that they're treating certain people, and we haven't received additional guidance about that. So people are considering 1099 employees or in 1099 contractors as part of their employment, as part of their payroll almost, if they're people who they're working with on a regular basis and who they know kind of are dependent upon that check. Now, if it's more of a corporation or a small company and they have the opportunity to apply for some of these things on their own, then a lot of companies are taking the position of, okay, I'm going to allow them to kind of apply for that on their own, being their own business. All right, so try to answer that question. I still see that I have some people on Instagram, I have some people watching on Facebook. So if there are no other questions, I just wanted to again leave you all with this idea. And again, I really wanted to emphasize that I want us to take the time to pause, prioritize, plan, and persist. We want to pause and kind of reflect on everything that's going on. I want you to prioritize your health, your family, your loved ones. I want you to plan. I want you to, because you've taken the time to take care of the things that matter most, I want you to sit back and say, how can I plan for the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, and how can I potentially use this to help me for the long haul? Maybe you might be able to get access to funds that you would not ordinarily get access to make a business transition, to try something new. All right, so you want to do that. And then finally, I want everyone to make the decision to persist, to keep trying, to not give up, to say, hey, even though everything is crazy and we're not really sure how we're going to pay these bills or what's going to happen tomorrow, even though things are really uncertain, I am dedicated to persisting, to pursuing my goals, to pressing forward. All right. So these are things that I think are really, really, really important. I'm so glad that you all were able to join me today. Thank you for joining. If there are any questions, again, I am trying to be as accessible as possible. Please reach out to me. Let me know. And that's all. I also did want to say that I'm a believer and I'm praying for everyone. I'm praying for people who are going through difficult times with their family members and just trying to navigate everything. I'm keeping everyone in our prayers. So God will help us. All right. Well, that's all for today. I hope you have an amazing night. Talk to you all soon. Bye.